Rise, please.
Good morning, please be seated. Mr. Medema.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, we're on record with People v. Westen Meulenberg, file 25-047543-FC. Date and time set for sentencing. The defendant appears in person from the Ottawa County Jail with his attorney, Mr. Barge. May I approach?
Yes.
Your Honor, we have received a pre-sentence investigation report. Myself, Mr. Bardish, and Your Honor have discussed that in chambers. When turning to the SIR, Your Honor, it is my position that OB1 should be scored at 25 points as in the current PSI. OB2 should be scored at 5. Offense variable 3 should be scored at 25 points.
We'll stop at that point. Mr. Bardish, OVs 1, 2, and 3, what's your position?
Your Honor, we believe those recitations are correct.
Okay, you may continue.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'll skip variables that are scored at 0. Next would then be OB5, which is scored at 15 points. OB6 should score at 10 points.
Mr. Bardish, OVs, I take it you have no objection to OV5, which is the psychological effect on the victim's family. You have no objection to that, correct?
I have no objection to OB5, Your Honor.
What about 6?
Can you repeat OB6? The factor is the
state of premeditation, mental state, I'll use that.
No, Your Honor, no objection.
All right, so just I'm going to indicate for OV6.
May I, Your Honor?
Hang on just a minute. This is the offender's intent. And 10 points is scored correctly based upon, frankly, a gross negligence. You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Next, then, Your Honor, would be OB 9. That should score at 10 points.
Number of victims, Mr. Bardish?
Your Honor, I apologize, I probably should have brought this up in chambers, and this is more just for to preserve the issue. I understand the court's position. We would argue that because the weapon was shot into the floor, I understand that it's based on the fact that there was two other individuals who were in the room with Westen when that weapon was shot. I would indicate that all three of them were together. According to reports, one of the other individuals actually loaded the weapon loaded the weapon based on it being from the PSI. So we'd ask that OB10 is not scored simply because I don't believe that there was danger to the other two individuals in the car. I'm aware of the court's position. We would just like to preserve that for any appellate issues.
OB9 factual basis?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. The pre-sentence investigation report does indicate that others in the room were afraid of a ricochet. Certainly that is a very real possibility here, and I believe that again, 9 should be scored at 10 points.
Multiple rounds were discharged in a dwelling, an occupied dwelling with multiple people there. 10 points is appropriate for 2 to 9 individuals who were placed in risk of harm. Next issue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Skipping forward then to offense variable 12, that should be scored at 10 points, I believe.
Based upon?
The fact that there were 7 shots here fired, Your Honor, each individual shot would be a criminal action.
That'd be a felony for discharge of a firearm in a building?
That's correct.
Mr. Bardish?
Your Honor, we would argue that with regards to OB12, just based on, we're not disputing that there was multiple shots, based on the nature of the weapon and how quickly they were fired in sequence, that entire sequence would be considered one sequence, not a separate sequence. And so under those circumstances, I don't believe that 10 points is appropriate.
Was this an automatic weapon?
I believe it was a semi-automatic weapon. I do believe it required a separate pull for each one, other than it was bang, bang, bang.
Well, I'll simplify this. If 3 people were hit by 3 separate rounds, they'd be charged with 3 different crimes. So the fact that 6 rounds did not hit anybody does not mean that they were not separate criminal acts. Each one was separate. Each trigger pull was separate. There was a separate act, ergo a separate felony. 3 or more felonies within 24 hours is 10 points. Next issue.
Your Honor, that is all the corrections that I have to the offense variable score. Prior record variable score would still score at 0, level A. Offense variable score then would be 100 points for level 6, making the sentencing guideline minimum range 108 to 180 months.
Mr. Bardish?
Your Honor, absent the objections that I've noted for the record, that is the correct scoring based on the court's rulings.
Now, I believe that there was an understanding by counsel earlier in this case that the guideline cell range would be different. Is that correct?
That is correct. Based on conversations with the prosecutor's office and some in court chambers, the state and the defense was under the impression that the guidelines would actually be scored at 42 to 70.
All right.
I had conveyed that to Westen prior to acceptance of the plea. However, I have advised him that he could ask me to withdraw that plea or even to adjourn the sentencing hearing just to process the change in the guidelines. Westen, not surprisingly, has indicated that he does not wish to prolong things any further, that he still wishes to go forward with his guilty plea, that he still feels he is guilty of the offenses that bring him here, and he wants to go forward.
So he's been fully informed of the differences in the cell grids? And
Yes.
he wishes to proceed, is that true?
Yes.
All right, we shall proceed. Next issue.
Thank you, Your Honor. I do have Steve, the father of the deceased Connor Loneman, who wishes to address the court regarding sentencing, as well as Ray. I don't know if the court would prefer to hear from them at this time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
If you wish to come to the podium, you may. If you wish to be seated at the prosecuting attorney's table, you may. Wherever you're comfortable. In the court's deepest sympathy to your family.
Pardon me?
The court's deepest sympathy to your family and loved ones.
Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Steve Lauderman. I'm Connor's father. Thank you, Your Honor, for the opportunity to address the court this morning. We've all been affected in many ways by the events of May 9. For us, Lauderman family, the news we received that night has forever changed our lives and changed who we are. Initially, we thought that we would not make a public statement, but as a family, we discussed it and decided that it was important to take this last opportunity to publicly talk about and honor Connor and to share how his death has impacted all our lives. My wife Marie and I have been married for 31 years. And God has blessed us with 5 children, of whom Connor was the youngest. He left behind 2 married sisters, Davinia and Kristen, a married brother, Brett, and a single sister, Marielle, who still lives at home with him and us. He was a cherished brother-in-law to Joel, Nate, and Sydney. And a favorite uncle to his young niece Vivi and 2 nephews, Asa and Auden. All of our children admit that Connor was their favorite sibling. This is not something we are saying just because he's gone. He was everyone's favorite. He was enjoyable to be around, always ready to help, eager to please, laid back and quietly funny. He made us laugh and brought a goofiness to every room he was in. He would drop everything he was doing if you needed a 4th person for a round of golf or a partner for a game of pickleball. At 19 years old, Connor was at such a pivotal point in life. He was old enough that we could see the man he was becoming. And we can easily picture what his future would have been like if he was still here. We will never see him graduate from Grand Valley State and become an engineer. We will never hear about his proposal to his dear girlfriend, Ray. Or see her wearing the ring he had picked out only a few days before his death. We will never see him marry Ray and become a husband. We will never see him have children or be the loving, godly father we trust that he would have been. Family gatherings are no longer the boisterous and happy get-togethers they used to be, but instead are painful reminders of what is missing. Our family is shattered. We can't go on our favorite camping trip that we would go on every year. We haven't been able to play cards or board games or pickleball together. These changes are because of the memories they hold of Connor, and it just doesn't feel right without him. As one of his sisters recently said, "Nothing I ever do will be 100% joyful." There will always be a missing piece. We are attending grief support groups in therapy and seeking medical help to cope with a new reality that has left us broken and devastated. It seems like, from an earthly point of view, it would be possible to endure missing Connor for a few months, a year or 2, even 5 years. But it's the never that is so painful. Never again will he be here with us. For the rest of our lives, we must live without him. Only our own deaths will stop the pain of his death and reunite us with him. The pain, trauma, and stress we are enduring since that night are the worst we have ever known and beyond anything we could have imagined. Initially, for weeks and even months, everything is a fog. Then, as the reality of his death sinks in, there is an inability to concentrate or even at times function. We experience claustrophobia, nausea, panic attacks, and some in the family struggle to do basic things such as getting out of bed, going to work, eating, or sleeping. My wife lays awake many nights traumatized by thoughts of Connor's final moments. Did he know what happened or what hit him when he walked in the door? How long was he lying there alone before anyone found him? How severe was his pain? Did he know he was dying? Her motherly instincts regret that she couldn't be there to comfort him in his final minutes of earthly consciousness. We need and pray for much grace to leave these matters in the hands of our God. Above all these psychological and emotional trials, this tragedy has tested our faith in ways we could never have imagined. We cry out with Asaph in Psalm 77, verse 9. Has God forgotten to be kind? We ask, is this really the pathway we must walk? As we navigate this difficult situation in our lives, it can be tempting to assume that God's love for us has changed or is different. However, even in the midst of this tragedy and loss, we have hope. We turn to Psalm 34, verse 18, which says, "The Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart, and saveth such as be of a contrite spirit." We know this long and difficult road will not end until we meet our Savior face to face, but the hope we have in the cross of Christ and the confidence in God as our strength will get us through. God has been with us through the difficult days, weeks, and months. He's used countless people, many of whom are here today, to show us His love, and we know He will continue to be with us until we meet Connor again in heaven. We take comfort in knowing just as Connor's death was not in our hands, neither is the outcome of the justice system. The weight of this tragedy has left us emotionally unable to contribute in the discussion of what a fair sentence would be, but we trust that in the providence of God, you, Judge Hulsing, have been chosen to determine and will render a fair and just decision. We hope that you, Weston, can understand the gravity of what you did. This wasn't an accident. It involved many deliberate, foolish decisions and actions which didn't just take Connor from us, but took the life we all had with him and changed us all until the end of our lives. We desire to forgive you, and we will continually bring this to the Lord for His help, as our forgiveness of you is limited by our imperfect human natures. Therefore, it will be an ongoing decision that we will have to repeat often for the rest of our lives. I don't think I will ever be able to forget what you have done. I don't think there will ever be a time when I see you and I won't have a flashback of my son's lifeless body in a hospital emergency room, surrounded by doctors and nurses, desperately trying to save his life. But I continually pray that I can look upon you as God does, with our sin covered over, washed in the blood of Christ. Our prayer for you is that through all this you will grow closer to the Lord and know God's strengthening presence and unchanging goodness. May we all find comfort in His promise, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." Hebrews 13. Thank you, Your Honor, again for the ability to speak and for your patience with me as I struggle through this.
Thank you.
My name is Ray Brummel. I was the girlfriend of Connor Waterman. Connor and I had been dating for almost 3 years when he was killed. We were planning on getting married maybe this fall, and he even went to the ring store the day before he was shot. Connor was my best friend, favorite person, and the boy I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. Connor was one of the only people I could always count on. He knew how to make my bad days better, and it's hard to continue to walk this life without him. Every day, Connor would remind me of all the reasons he loved me. It's been 5 months since his death, and not a day goes by where I don't miss him and the life we had planned. Sometimes it still seems like he is coming back. Everything that Connor did was with the intention to make me happy. He always put my needs before his own. Even though our relationship was not perfect, we really did have a love for each other. Connor worked hard at everything he did, and I knew that one day he was going to be a great husband and father, because at family things, all the little cousins would attach themselves to Connor the entire time. I'll never forget the love that me and Connor had. It will always be a part of me. I miss the feeling of being loved just as much. He loved me with his whole heart. This was evident by the love letters he wrote me. The love in his actions towards me. Yes, there were times where we argued, but at the end of the day, we both realized our weaknesses and prayed that God would continue to bless our relationship. A month before Connor was killed, me and him were driving down the street where this all happened. He looked at me and said, "Ray, I hope that I die first, because I would not be able to live without you." I looked at him, laughed, and said, "Oh, Connor, don't worry about that. We have at least 50 years. There's a lot that we have to do first." A month later, I received the call that he had been shot. Even though I keep showing up to things and laughing and trying to live, every day now is marked by his absence. It is only through God's strength that I can live each day, but at times I hate that this is my reality. Losing Connor has changed me. I'm not the same girl I was when I was with him, and a part of me will not go back to who I was before Connor. I am healing, but that does not mean I am forgetting him. I will carry him with me as I walk the path God has placed in front of me. When I lost Connor, I thought all it was losing him. But it's not. It's also all the secondary losses that I have to endure. All the events and places I have to go for the first time without him. I will never become his wife. I will never travel with him. I will never see him become a father. And I'll never hear his laugh or voice again. I'll never have one last conversation or one last hug. His death is permanent from this earth, and every day I'm faced with the secondary losses. I'm scared I'll forget his face, the way he laughed, he told stories. And I'm scared I will forget the way or his voice, and my memories of him will begin to fade. For me, the reality of grief is feeling so alone. Even though I have a big support system, there's no one I'd rather call than Connor, as I crash out over his death. It's amazing how alone you can feel when everyone's life carries on and they get to experience the events me and Connor looked forward to. Before Connor died, Sundays were my favorite day of the week because we got to spend the whole day and attend church. Now, Sundays are the hardest day of the week and I dread them. I also dread holidays and I never want to experience another one without him. Since his death, I have been told that I have depression and anxiety as I journey through the trauma and grief. I often have nervous breakdowns when things get too overwhelming, and often struggle with sleep and brain fog, making simple tasks sometimes hard. There is a level of trauma that I have experienced because I was halfway across the world when it happened. There is a sense of guilt for missing the last week of his life and his last breath on earth. Being so far away, it wasn't until after he had passed that I was able to be back by his side. I'm scared to go on trips, first because I don't want anyone to die while I am away, but also coming back to Connor being gone makes me relive May 10. When anyone mentions guns or alcohol, my entire body tenses up and all I can think about is Connor. I'm scared that at any moment the next closest person to me is going to die. Connor's death has impacted many of my relationships, some good and some negative. One of those relationships that has been impacted is with my family. Not only do they miss him, but they were looking forward to adding a brother and a son to the family. My parents and my siblings have also had to watch their daughter and sister grieve and live with the burden of losing Connor. One of the better impacts is my relationship with Connor's family, the Laudermans. Connor brought them into my life, and I will forever be grateful to him for that. These last couple months I have grown closer with them. However, it is also bittersweet as I will never officially be a part of their family. There are many things that we are going to have to navigate in the future and questions that I don't have the answer to regarding our relationship. They are my second family, and I do not want to lose the relationship I have with them. If I'm honest, there is fear and worry about what the future holds for that. In the beginning, I found myself reaching for my phone to send a text of something interesting that happened or to give them a phone call. The one person I always wanted to share my day and experience with was no longer on the other end of the phone. I keep thinking how different things would be if Connor was still here and he could experience how much I love and need him during the time I need him most. As for you, Weston, you have seen me being strong and gracious towards you, but with full honesty, I have wrapped my brain around that it was your actions that took Connor's life. Yes, this wasn't God's plan, but we cannot just shrug our shoulders and say this had to happen. It was God's plan. Because yes, even though that is true, God is not the author of sin and he hates sin. What happened on May 9 was a result of sin. James 1 verse 13 says, "Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempt he any man." God allowed the devil to tempt you, Weston, that night, but you still actively chose to consume a lot of alcohol. You chose to pick up that gun, and you chose to fire it 7 times into the floor. I know that one day I will be able to look you in the eyes and say, I forgive you. As for now, I continue to work through the process of forgiveness each day. I would be lying if I continued to put on this mask of being strong, but it's really hard to be vulnerable with the person who took Connor from me. To others that don't see my pain, my tears, or me at my lowest, it's because I guard myself to avoid more pain. I trust that whatever happens in the next couple minutes, days, weeks, and months to come, God is guiding each of us, and he will never leave my side, Weston's side, and everyone else's. Thank you, Judge, for allowing me to share.
Thank you. Mr. Medema, anything further?
Thank you, Your Honor. There's not much, Your Honor, that I could say other than what we've heard here today. I've walked through this impossible situation with Maria and Steve, met with them on several occasions. They leave this to you, Your Honor, regarding the sentence. We've discussed several times that this was not a mistake. While Mr. Meulenberg did not obviously intend the consequence of this action, certainly this was an intentional action. He put himself in the situation. He disregarded the multiple warnings, and he fired not 1 time, but 7. Throughout those meetings with the Laudermans, Your Honor, I've been struck by their reasonableness, by their compassion, and by their faith that they've had walking through this. So again, they leave this to your discretion. We've discussed the changes in the guidelines, and they leave it wholly to you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Barnes, would you take your point to the podium, please? Mr. Barnes, we've gone over the guidelines. Anything in the narrative that needs to be corrected?
Nothing in the narrative, Your Honor.
Allocution.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, this court has received our sentencing memorandum, and there was legal arguments that were made in there. I trust that the court has been able to review, and I don't need to reiterate them. Is that correct? Your Honor, this is one of those cases as a defense attorney I think is probably the hardest ones that you can have. I desperately wish that I would have met Westen Meulenberg under different circumstances than I met him. He is somebody who I would be proud to call my own son. He is somebody who I would want my own son to emulate and to be friends with. I am also incredibly sad that I never got the opportunity to meet Connor Lauderman in this case. I have reviewed every letter that's been submitted on Connor's behalf, and he is clearly was a son that any parent would be proud to have, and likewise somebody who I wish my own kids would have emulated, not only been friends with, but would have emulated. And I cannot imagine the grief that the Lauderman family is going through. Learning about Connor through the victim impact letters, I had not learned anything new. And the reason I had not learned anything new was because throughout this entire process, Westen had talked nothing about Connor and nothing about Connor's parents. As a defense attorney, when you sit down and you sit down with your client and you sit down with the family members, one of the first things that any client asks is, what's going to happen to me? What am I looking at? And what I can tell you through this entire process, Westen had never once brought that question to my attention. Westen's first question to me is, I don't know if I deserve to have an attorney. I did this. I need to pay for what I did. And I need to take responsibility for it. And it struck me because Westen throughout this entire time was about what do I do to make things right? Do I reach out? I don't want to reach out to anybody if me reaching out is going to cause pain. And I think from the get-go, what I can tell you about this young man was that this was a terribly tragic, poor, reckless decision he made. And will be the first one to tell you that. And he said that from the get-go. Westen admitted that he was the one who did it when police first contacted him. He never tried to deflect that there was anybody else who could have done this. He said it was him, and he always had asked, what's going to happen to Connor? What's going to happen to Connor? So I know that the individual you have here before you, it makes sense that Westen and Connor were friends, because they were probably two of the best of youth that you could think of. And the tragedy is one is gone, and one is before you, is about to go to prison. With regards, one of the letters that struck, and Westen had asked me to brought up, is that I think there was a letter that maybe that the Laudermans had felt abandoned at some point by the church, because there was a rallying around Westen, and maybe a not giving the proper care to the Lauderman family. And I tell you that was something that Westen, when he read that letter, crushed him. And it was ironic, because during various conversations that we would have, and we would talk about the church and the elders, and his, again, number one concern is are the Laudermans okay? Is someone looking out for the Lauderman family? So I can assure you that this is a young man who, he's not somebody who society needs to be protected from. He's not somebody who is going to ever reoffend. He is not somebody that anybody needs to be protected from. He is a good, godly, loving, caring young man who is racked with guilt because of what he did to his friend Connor. And he has never called it an accident. He understands the difference between accident and doing something intentionally that has an unintentional consequence. And I have clients all the time say it was an accident. I've never heard him use the word accident. He's never used that word. So I don't know what to tell you is the appropriate sentence. What I can tell you is, obviously going in today, we were under the impression that the guideline range was 42 to 70. I understand the court's rulings on that. And so I guess, turns to like the federal system, which is, what is a sentence that is sufficient but not greater than necessary to accomplish those goals of what sentencing is. And I'd ask that you arrive at a sentence that is sufficient but just not greater than necessary. Again, Connor Lauderman was a wonderful kid, a wonderful young man, and I wish I would have had a chance to meet him. I'm happy I had the chance to meet Westen. I'm a better person for it. And I know I would have been a better person if I would have had a chance to meet Connor. Thank you, Your Honor.
You are Westen Meulenberg.
I am.
Have you had an adequate opportunity to read and review the pre-sentence report?
Yes.
Any
No.
additions or corrections that you wish to make?
No.
Anything that you would like to say before sentence is imposed?
Yes, please.
You may proceed.
I would. Mr. and Mrs. Lauderman family, Ray, Brummel family. I want to use this opportunity to apologize in person to those whom I have hurt, and realize that I can never apologize to everyone who was touched through Connor's death. I have sinned against you all. I have also sinned against Connor, someone who has only been good to me, someone who I benefited from, someone who only gave in life, someone who I appreciated, enjoyed, and respected. That someone who gave so much to me, I returned only evil to in his last day. It pains me to know how good of a man I took away from you all. The worst part is how permanent the consequences of my stupid choices are. Choices I can never explain or take back. Those choices that night will haunt me for the rest of my life, as I know they will for so many others. I can say I'm sorry and apologize as many times as I want, but without actions, my words are useless. Sorry has to mean something. It has to mean something to everyone here and everyone who I've hurt. That something might be different for each person, and that something might change as no hurt is discovered. I believe today that something is to humbly accept the punishment from the state for the numerous laws I've broken. Sorry also has to mean something to myself. I promise you my life will change with the memory of Connor. I promise you I will lead a sober life physically and an ever-increasingly sober life spiritually. I hope my choices these past 5 months and my future choices will show that I am truly sorry and that I understand the seriousness of my actions. I hope that I have shown and continue to show through this all that I accept the responsibility of my actions and do not shy away from them. I hope I can be a testament of how Connor lived, selflessly caring for others and serving our Lord. With God's gracious help, I dedicate myself to a life of true repentance. Through this all, I understand my lifestyle changes, and these promises can never bring Connor back and will never take away the pain of him not being here on earth anymore. So I make one more promise that I'll fervently pray to God for peace and comfort for all those who are hurting. That's it.
Does that conclude your comments?
It does.
Initially, it's incumbent upon the court to accurately score the guidelines. We went through these in detail before this procedure started, and the court is very confident that the guidelines are accurately scored. Just parenthetically, the discharge of a firearm at a building, typically we see that in gang type of activities where some nefarious individuals are trying to send a message to an opposing group and they fire rounds into a home. Sometimes they hit people, sometimes they don't. Obviously, that's not the case here. This is far from that. So in the gang situation, there is an intent to either inflict harm or to send a message. There was no intended consequence here. Certainly there was an act, but there was no intended consequence here. Obviously, the result was catastrophic. The guidelines do contemplate that you do not have a criminal history. That's your as far as the prior record variables go, that is a 0. So those are contemplated. As far as the need for rehabilitation, there probably isn't any. I don't think you pose a risk to the public. I don't think anybody here believes that you pose a risk to the public, as eloquently stated by your attorney. So as far as we need to lock somebody up for a lengthy period of time because they pose a risk, that's not going to factor into this scenario because you do not pose a risk of harm. The guidelines do not factor into youth, and sometimes youth make unwise decisions. By the same token, the result of this is permanent and profound. It's catastrophic. I've received letters on behalf of the victim and their loved ones, and I've received letters on behalf of the defendant. All of them were very respectful to the opposing side. Very, very respectful. And they were very good, I must say. And I read each and every one of them. I can assure you of that. Spent quite a bit of time last week going over this material. Frankly, quite a bit of time contemplating where the court was going to land, and that decision has not been made until now. So as far as the guidelines go, I don't think we need to sentence you within the guidelines. That's simply too much time based upon you did not have a nefarious intent as far as the consequence goes. There's no history, your youth, and the fact that you're not a danger to the public. So I think there's a deviation downward from the guidelines that needs to be done. Where I've landed is actually a couple of grids down. So as the attorneys have indicated, I've indicated that the guidelines contemplate a sentence, and they're advisory, but they're pretty strongly advisory, of between 108 and 180 on the minimum. That's between 9 and 15 on the minimum. We're going to go below that. I think that where the attorneys originally contemplated the guidelines might land, that's probably where the sentence should land. It's not going to fix this situation because it's not fixable. It's not giving value to Connor because he was invaluable. I mean, I just can't. But what we do need to recognize is that you were intoxicated, fired off multiple rounds in a dwelling where you knew there were people, and Connor died as a result of that. So we're going to hold you accountable for that. By the same token, recognize that you do have a future, and I think where I've landed here, within the contemplated guidelines is where to go, but it's gonna be at the top of the guidelines, influenced by the letters that I've received. It is the sentence of this court that you be turned over to the Michigan Department of Corrections for a minimum of 70 months, a maximum of 300 months. You have credit for 29 days previously served, must pay a restitution of $8,000, must pay state cost, crime victim costs, and DNA fees that are required by statute. This is a final sentence. You may file an application with the Court of Appeals regarding your conviction and sentence. If you're unable to hire an attorney, this court will appoint one to represent you at public expense. You need to fill out the paperwork you've been provided and return it within 42 days. That is the sentence. And for those in the gallery, the king still sits on the throne.
Your Honor, there's a request for restitution amount of $8,000 to the crime victim's compensation.
That's where we'll go. Thank you very much. We are in recess.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right.